The weight of silence. The galaxy had learned to fear humanity's wars. But it had never learned to understand humanity's peace. Commander Veckrel stood on the observation deck of the Coalition flagship, staring at the blue and green planet below. Earth. The word tasted strange in his mind, like a riddle wrapped in contradiction. For 300 cycles, the Coalition had studied this species. For 300 cycles, they had prepared for the inevitable conflict. Humans were warriors. Survivors. Conquerors. Every simulation, every historical analysis, every psychological profile pointed to the same conclusion: humanity would expand, dominate, and destroy. It was their nature. It was what made them dangerous. And yet, here they were. Waiting. They still haven't responded to our hails, Lieutenant Serene said, her voice tight with anxiety. She was young, barely past her second molt, and this was her first contact mission. Veckrel didn't blame her for the fear in her eyes. He felt it too. Commander, our weapons are primed. If they launch. They won't, Veckrel interrupted. He didn't know how he knew. He just did. Something about the way Earth sat in the darkness, silent and still, like a predator that had already decided not to strike. It unnerved him more than any threat display ever could. The Coalition had arrived 3 days ago with 60 warships. It was meant to be a show of strength, a deterrent, a message that said, "We see you. We know what you are. Do not test us." Humanity had just achieved faster-than-light travel. They had built their first interstellar colony. They were at the threshold, the dangerous moment when a species either joined the galactic community or tried to conquer it. History had taught the Coalition which path warriors always chose. But Earth had done nothing. No weapons lock. No defensive formations. No threats. Just silence. "Sir, this doesn't make sense," Serene pressed. "We've intercepted their communications. They know we're here. They know we're armed. Why aren't they responding?" Veckrel turned away from the viewport. His 4 eyes scanned the tactical display, searching for the trap he knew must be there. Humans were clever. Deceptive. They had wiped out their own predators, survived ice ages, split the atom, and clawed their way to the stars through nothing but stubborn will and violence. A species like that didn't simply roll over when threatened. "Maybe they're afraid," Serene suggested. "Humans don't fear," Veckrel said quietly. "That's what makes them dangerous." He had studied their history obsessively. The wars that had consumed continents. The weapons that could crack planets. The way they threw themselves at impossible odds and somehow, impossibly, survived. But there were other things too, things that didn't fit the pattern. Art. Music. Philosophy. Humans had landed on their own moon not with weapons, but with a plaque that read, "We came in peace for all mankind." They had built machines to explore the cosmos and named them after dreams and hopes. They had looked into the void and instead of conquering it, they had wondered at it. The contradiction gnawed at him. "Incoming transmission," the communications officer announced suddenly. "Audio only. It's coming from Earth's moon." Veckrel straightened. On screen. The voice that filled the bridge was human. Male. Calm. It spoke in flawless galactic standard, which meant they had been listening, learning, preparing. "Coalition flagship, this is Luna Station. We apologize for the delay in responding. We've been discussing how to answer your arrival." Veckrel activated his microphone. "This is Commander Veckrel of the Galactic Coalition. You will explain your intentions in this sector. You will submit to inspection of your vessels and colonies. You will agree to the terms of the expansion protocols, or you will face the consequences." There was a pause. Then the human spoke again, and Veckrel heard something in his voice that he couldn't identify. Not fear. Not defiance. Something else. "Commander, we understand your concerns. We've studied your history too. We know what you've seen from species like ours. We know why you're here. Then you understand that we will not allow another war, Veckrel said coldly. Yes, the human replied. We understand. That's why we're not going to give you one. The bridge fell silent. Serene looked at Veckrel with wide eyes, confused. Veckrel felt his primary heart hammering in his chest. This was wrong. This was all wrong. Warriors didn't surrender without a fight. Predators didn't roll over and show their throats. Unless. What are you saying? Veckrel demanded. The human's voice was soft, almost sad. We're saying that we've been where you are, Commander. We've stood on the edge of extinction, staring at our own capacity for violence, wondering if we could ever be anything more than killers. And we decided that we could. We decided that we would. Not because it was easy. Not because we weren't afraid. But because we looked at the stars and realized that if we brought our wars out here, we'd only be spreading the same darkness we spent centuries trying to escape. Veckrel opened his mouth, but no words came. You came here expecting monsters, the human continued. And maybe we were, once. Maybe we still are, in some ways. But we're also the species that looked at our own history, at all the blood and all the ash, and said, never again. You're afraid of what we might do, Commander. We understand. We're afraid of it too. That's why we're choosing peace. Not because you're forcing us. But because we're forcing ourselves. The transmission ended. The bridge remained silent. Veckrel stared at the blue planet below, and for the first time in 300 cycles, he wondered if the coalition had been wrong. Not about humanity's capacity for violence. But about whether that capacity defined them. Serene's voice was barely a whisper. Sir, what do we do now? Veckrel didn't answer. He didn't know. Because for all their preparation, for all their simulations and strategies, the coalition had never planned for this. They had never planned for the possibility that humanity's greatest strength wasn't their ability to fight. It was their ability to choose not to. The lesson of scars. 3 days passed, and Earth remained silent. The coalition fleet held position, weapons still primed, uncertainty spreading through the ranks like poison. Veckrel had sent 17 more transmissions. All had been answered with the same calm, patient voice from Luna Station. The humans would meet. They would talk. But they would not be threatened. They would not comply with demands made at gunpoint. And they would not fight. This is a trap, Admiral Corvin announced during the command briefing. His scales gleamed under the harsh lights of the war room, violet and sharp. He was old, decorated, a veteran of the Kravis uprising where he had watched an entire civilization burn itself to ash rather than surrender. They're buying time. Building weapons. Positioning fleets. I've seen this before. Have you? Veckrel asked quietly. He had been studying the human transmissions, the patterns in their language, the weight in their words. Because I haven't. I've seen defiance. I've seen rage. I've seen species spit at us with their last breath. But this? This is something else. It's manipulation, Corvin snapped. They're making us doubt. Making us hesitate. And when we drop our guard, they'll strike. Veckrel wanted to believe that. It would be easier. Simpler. But the evidence didn't support it. Coalition surveillance had been watching Earth's orbital infrastructure for 72 hours straight. No weapons platforms being assembled. No military buildup. In fact, human warships were powering down, returning to dock, their crews disembarking. It was the opposite of preparation for war. They've agreed to a meeting, Veckrel said. Face to face. Neutral ground. The lunar surface, in one of their research stations. Absolutely not, Corvin said immediately. It's an assassination attempt. We send you down there, you don't come back. Then you're saying humans are exactly what we feared, Veckrel replied. Treacherous. Violent. Untrustworthy. He paused, letting the words hang. But if that's true, why haven't they attacked? We're sitting in orbit around their homeworld with enough firepower to crack their civilization in half. If they wanted us dead, they could have tried. They have nuclear weapons. Chemical weapons. Biological agents. They could have thrown something at us, anything, just to hurt us before we hurt them. But they haven't. Corvin's eyes narrowed. You're defending them. I'm questioning us, Veckrel corrected. I'm questioning whether we came here to prevent a war or to start one. The silence that followed was heavy, dangerous. Corvin's hand twitched near his sidearm. For a moment, Veckrel thought the Admiral might actually draw it. But then Corvin simply turned and walked toward the exit. At the door, he stopped. If you go down there and they kill you, Commander, I will glass that planet. Not out of revenge. But because it will prove I was right all along. Veckrel watched him leave. Then he looked at Serene, who had been quiet throughout the exchange. Assemble a diplomatic team. Small. Unarmed. We're going to meet the humans. Sir, she said carefully, what if the Admiral is right? Veckrel thought about that. About the weight of 300 cycles of policy, of fear, of preemptive strikes disguised as protection. About all the species the coalition had neutralized, suppressed, or destroyed in the name of galactic peace. And he thought about the human voice on the transmission, tired and sad and determined. We're afraid of it too. If he's right, Veckrel said, then we deserve what happens next. Because it means we're no better than the monsters we claim to fight. The lunar research station was small, built into the side of a crater, more laboratory than fortress. Veckrel's shuttle touched down on the gray dust, and he could see humans through the transparent dome of the airlock. 3 of them. No armor. No visible weapons. One was old, her hair white, her face lined with age. Another was young, barely adult, with dark skin and nervous eyes. The third was the voice from the transmissions, middle-aged, wearing simple clothes and a tired smile. They walked out to meet the coalition team in spacesuits, standing on the surface of their own moon, vulnerable and exposed. Commander Veckrel, the man said, his voice crackling over the radio. I'm Dr. Marcus Chen. This is Dr. Amara Okonkwo and Dr. Yuki Tanaka. Thank you for coming. Veckrel didn't extend a gesture of greeting. Neither did his guards. You said you wanted to talk. So talk. Dr. Chen nodded slowly. He gestured toward the station. Would you come inside? We've prepared something we'd like to show you. More manipulation, one of Veckrel's guards muttered. More honesty, Chen replied. Something we think you need to see. Something we think the galaxy needs to understand about us. Not our weapons. Not our warships. But our scars. You came here expecting to find warriors, Chen said quietly. And you were right. We are warriors. We've been fighting since we learned to pick up rocks and smash each other's skulls. But we're also the survivors of our own violence. We're the children of people who looked at all of this and said, enough. Not because we stopped being capable of evil. But because we decided to build something better anyway. Dr. Okonkwo stepped forward. We know what you see when you look at us, Commander. You see predators. Killers. A species that will spread through the galaxy and bring death with them. And you're not wrong to be afraid. But you're wrong to think that's all we are. Dr. Tanaka spoke next, her voice soft. We spent centuries tearing ourselves apart. And then we stopped. Not because we were forced to. Not because we ran out of ways to hurt each other. But because enough of us chose peace. Chose to build instead of destroy. Chose to look at the stars and see not territory to conquer, but neighbors to meet. Chen walked to a final display. It was a plaque, the same one Veckrell had read about in the human archives. The words engraved on the first object humanity had placed on another world. "We came in peace for all mankind," Chen read aloud. "We wrote that knowing we were still fighting wars on our own planet. Knowing we were still hurting each other. Knowing we hadn't earned the right to those words yet. But we wrote them anyway, because we wanted to become the species that could mean them. And we have spent every day since trying to live up to that promise." Veckrell looked at the plaque. At the Museum of Horrors. At the three humans standing before him, unarmed and unafraid. And he understood. They weren't showing him their weakness. They were showing him their strength. The strength it took to face your own capacity for darkness and choose light anyway. The strength it took to carry the weight of history and still reach for hope. "You want us to trust you," Veckrell said slowly. "No," Chen replied. "We want you to understand us. Trust is something we'll have to earn. We know that. But we can't earn it if you destroy us first." Veckrell looked at his guards. At Serene, who was staring at the images with tears in her eyes. At the human doctors who had laid their species' shame bare rather than hide behind pride. And he made a decision that would either save the galaxy or doom it. "We'll recommend to the coalition that humanity be granted provisional membership," Veckrell said. "With monitoring. With oversight. With the understanding that if you prove us wrong, the consequences will be absolute." Chen nodded. "We understand. And Commander? We'll prove you right." The choice that echoes. 6 months later, Veckrell stood in the Coalition Grand Assembly, facing the judgment of 1,000 worlds. The chamber was vast, a cathedral of light and shadow where the fate of civilizations was decided. Representatives from every member species filled the tiered seats, their eyes fixed on him with expressions ranging from curiosity to contempt. Admiral Corvin sat among them, his face carved from stone, waiting for vindication. The vote on humanity's provisional membership was today. And Veckrell knew it could go either way. "Commander Veckrell," the speaker intoned, her voice amplified across the chamber. She was Etherean, ancient and wise, her form shimmering like water given shape. "You have spent half a cycle with the humans. You have observed their worlds, their fleets, their intentions. The Assembly awaits your final report. Should humanity be welcomed into the Galactic Coalition, or should they be contained before they become a threat?" Veckrell stepped forward onto the central platform. Above him, holographic displays flickered to life, showing Earth, Luna Station, the human colonies spreading slowly, carefully through their local star systems. He had prepared a speech. Diplomatic. Balanced. Safe. But standing here now, looking at the faces of species who had spent centuries building walls against their fears, he knew that safe wasn't enough. 6 months ago, I believed humanity would destroy us, Veckrell began. His voice was steady, but his hearts were racing. I believed that any species capable of the violence in their history would inevitably turn that violence outward. I believed that warriors could only ever be warriors. And I was wrong. A murmur rippled through the assembly. Corvin leaned forward, his eyes narrowing. But I wasn't wrong about their capacity for violence, Veckrell continued. Humans are dangerous. They have weapons that could shatter worlds. They have a military tradition that spans their entire history. They have survived extinction events, planetary conflicts, and their own worst impulses. They are survivors. Fighters. Everything we feared. He paused, letting the words settle. And everything we need. The murmur grew louder. The speaker raised a hand for silence. Explain yourself, Commander. Veckrell activated a new display. It showed the frontier zone, the lawless edge of coalition space where pirates, slavers, and worse things lurked beyond the reach of law. 3 weeks ago, a human merchant vessel encountered a slave ship in the Outer Rim. The ship was carrying 200 captives from the Delari species, bound for the black markets. The human ship was unarmed. Outmatched. They could have jumped to FTL and escaped. No one would have blamed them. No one would have even known. The display shifted, showing sensor logs, communications records, the desperate transmissions from the human captain. Instead, they sent a distress call. And then they rammed the slave ship. They disabled their engines. They held position for 6 hours, broadcasting on every frequency, refusing to let the slavers jump away. And when coalition patrol ships finally arrived, the human crew was barely alive. But every single captive was saved. The chamber was silent now. Veckrel could feel the weight of their attention. The human captain's name was Sarah Mitchell. I spoke with her in the medical bay before she died from her injuries. I asked her why she did it. Why she threw her life away for people she'd never met, from a species she'd never encountered. He paused, his voice thick with emotion he didn't try to hide. She said, because someone had to. Because if we reach the stars and bring the same indifference we fought so hard to overcome, then what was the point of leaving home at all? Dr. Okonkwo's voice came through the speakers next, a recording Veckrel had made during his time on Earth. You ask us what makes humanity different. It's not that we don't have darkness. It's that we refuse to let darkness have us. Every day is a choice. Every action is a decision. We chose to come to the stars not as conquerors, but as students. Not to take, but to learn. Not to dominate, but to belong. Veckrel looked up at the assembly, at the faces of species who had built their peace on fear and isolation. For 300 cycles, the Coalition has kept the galaxy safe by keeping dangerous species contained. We've prevented wars by preventing contact. We've maintained order by maintaining control. And in doing so, we've created a galaxy where no one dares to be more than what we allow them to be. Veckrel's voice rose, filling the chamber with conviction he hadn't known he possessed. The question before us isn't whether humanity is perfect. They're not. Neither are we. The question is whether we have the courage to judge a species not by their worst moments, but by what they do with them. Whether we can look at people who climbed out of their own darkness and say, welcome. We've been waiting for you. The chamber erupted. Arguments flying between representatives, accusations and defenses, fear and hope clashing in equal measure. The speaker called for order, her voice cutting through the chaos. The assembly will vote. All in favor of granting humanity provisional membership in the Galactic Coalition. Veckrel watched as the votes appeared on the display. Green lights flickering to life across the chamber. Some hesitant. Some immediate. Some clustering in groups as species consulted one another. And slowly, impossibly, the green began to outnumber the red. When the final count appeared, Veckrel felt something release in his chest. Not quite relief. Not quite triumph. Something closer to hope. The vote was close. But it was enough. Humanity is granted provisional membership, the speaker announced. Subject to review, monitoring, and the continued demonstration of peaceful intent. Commander Veckrel, you will serve as their liaison. May wisdom guide us all. 3 days later, Veckrel stood again on the observation deck of the Coalition flagship, looking down at Earth. But this time, he wasn't alone. Dr. Chen stood beside him, along with Ambassador Priya Sharma, humanity's first official representative to the Galactic Coalition. You took a hell of a risk, Ambassador Sharma said quietly. Speaking for us like that. If we mess this up, your career is over. If you mess this up, much more than my career will be over, Veckrel replied. But there was no accusation in his voice. Only truth. The galaxy will be watching you. Every decision. Every action. There are species out there who voted against you, who are waiting for you to prove them right. We know, Chen said. We've been living under that kind of scrutiny our whole history. Every marginalized group on Earth, every nation that clawed its way to equality, every movement that demanded to be seen as human, they all faced the same test. Be twice as good. Work twice as hard. Prove yourselves again and again and never, ever make a mistake. He smiled, tired but determined. We're used to it. That's not fair, Beckrel said. No, Ambassador Sharma agreed. It's not. But fairness is something we'll build together, over time. Right now, we'll take the chance to prove ourselves. Because a chance is all we ever needed. Beckrel looked at them, these humans who carried the weight of their species' future with such quiet strength, and he felt something shift inside him. For 300 cycles, he had been taught to fear the unknown. To see danger in difference. To meet potential threats with preemptive force. But these humans had shown him another way. Not through weakness. Not through surrender. But through the kind of courage it took to be vulnerable, to be honest, to be hopeful in a galaxy that had forgotten how. There's a human saying I've been studying, Beckrel said. From one of your old leaders. We choose to go to the moon not because it is easy, but because it is hard. I think I finally understand what that means. Chen nodded. It means that the things worth doing are the things that scare us. The things that force us to become better than we were. The things that make us reach beyond what we thought was possible. Then I choose to believe in you, Beckrel said. Not because it's easy. But because it's right. Ambassador Sharma extended her hand, the human gesture of partnership and trust. Beckrel looked at it for a moment, remembering all the ways this could go wrong. All the risks. All the uncertainties. And then he reached out and grasped it, feeling the warmth of human skin against his own, and understanding that this was how peace was built. Not through distance and fear, but through contact and courage. Below them, Earth turned slowly in the darkness, a blue jewel in the void, carrying 8 billion souls who had chosen to reach for the stars not with weapons, but with wonder. And around them, the galaxy watched and waited, afraid and hopeful, uncertain and curious, standing at the edge of something new. Not the end of fear. Not the absence of danger. But the beginning of understanding. The fragile, precious, terrifying hope that maybe, just maybe, they could all choose to be better than their worst selves. That monsters could become heroes. That warriors could become peacekeepers. That the species who had once torn themselves apart could help hold the galaxy together. It wouldn't be easy. It would take generations. Centuries. There would be setbacks and failures, misunderstandings and conflicts, moments when the whole fragile structure threatened to collapse under the weight of old fears and new suspicions. But it would be worth it. Because in the end, that was the choice that mattered. Not the choice between war and peace. But the choice between remaining what you were and becoming what you could be. And for the first time in 300 cycles, Commander Beckrel looked at the future and saw not something to fear. But something to hope for.